All right, everyone. A small group of Democrats look like they might defect on DACA and actually work with Donald Trump. Now, if you know anything about the ongoing negotiations, all you need is 3 or 4 Democrats to do so. It looks like that may actually end up happening. Now, Trump has consistently said any DACA deal is fine with him, but it must include a wall and preferably includes a crackdown on sanctuary cities. Okay, that sounds fine. That would be a huge victory for him. It would also, it's a win-win for everyone. The Democrats are going to suffer if they make immigration an issue. Outside of a few regions of the country, they've lost on immigration. Most of the country opposes them, including a lot of competitive regions, which Trump won. There are competitive races where they're like, we're like a couple points ahead, maybe a couple points behind. If we screw this up, if we alienate voters in this area, and we only have to alienate a slim proportion of them, we will lose this potential Senate seat. Well, they don't want that. What's the point of holding rank in the Senate right now only to end up losing power in the Senate even worse so Trump can do whatever he wants unless the Democrats retake the House? All the Republicans have to do is gain, I think, like 3 Senate seats anyway, and they can basically run roughshod over the Democrats unless they flip the House of Representatives. The chances of that are decreasing over time. And you've got this weird situation where the corporate media has deviated from the Democrats, specifically within the Senate. Within the House, may be different. Within the Senate, they are very reluctant to talk about immigration, it seems, in the lead up to the midterms. Wise decision, because you haven't done anything on immigration. You're left holding the bill on for the American people, essentially, in terms of lost votes, not Trump. Trump's willing to tackle it. He constantly talks about his willingness. You may disagree with how he wishes to tackle it, but he's willing to strike a deal. He's already said that a million times. For a lot of the Democratic leadership, they're not willing to strike a deal. Meanwhile, you have a few individuals who I guess are. That's all he needs. If he gets his wall and some crackdown on sanctuary cities or something, or deporting certain classes of former DACA recipients in exchange for having the rest of them be granted some degree of leniency, whatever form it takes, that is a huge electoral win for Donald Trump come 2020. That's another campaign promise kept. And I do believe he will push for full wall funding in any DACA deal. Look, it's peanuts as far as the total budget goes. It would be cheap to build the wall that he specifically has proposed. It's already been prototyped. You know roughly how much it'll cost. No, you don't have to run it from one ocean to the other because there are certain regions on our southern border that are impassable. There are also certain regions that are already fortified properly. You close the gaps. Most of the southern states approve of this. It's basically California holding out, and several of their counties and cities have defected from California on this issue and are suing their own state, joining a federal lawsuit, with the federal government and other states saying enough is enough. No, the federal government has the right to build a wall, to deport people in accordance with already agreed upon legislative decisions on immigration. Some people are acting as though Trump is a big meanie, but he's just enforcing laws that in some cases were struck back in the 1980s. He didn't make these rules. He's enforcing them. The difference is, for Obama's second term, at least, he didn't enforce immigration law. And it was a big loss for the Democrats. Some of them began being a little bit reluctant to own up to what they had done because it made a mess of our immigration system. And now, legal immigrants get fucked over because of people who came here illegally. That's essentially what it boils down to. Well, illegal immigrants aren't voting. Legal immigrants are. Whoops, yeah, that might be a problem for the Democrats unless they can get blanket amnesty, and I don't think they're going to get it, dude. It's like Mulnul, and we spoke quite some time ago. He said, I don't think that, immigration will ever be tackled. The only thing standing in its way is the fact that the Democrats up until now have thought that they could hold off on the issue until after the midterms because they were hoping to regain the House and the Senate, so then they could do basically whatever they wanted. Or at the very least, they would get most of what they wanted. You might get a wall, but, nobody gets deported. Sanctuary cities and states are fine. Trump would have to, negotiate with them on that, and basically he wouldn't get much. Or he'd get a few deportations, but he wouldn't get his wall, and it would be a campaign promise broken. Trump would have to own that. That doesn't look like it's going to happen, though. At the very least, I think the Republicans come out of the midterms probably with a few extra seats in the Senate than they already have. They're not going to lose control of the Senate, so the Democrats will not get their blue wave. It doesn't even really matter at that point if they retake the House. Well, that's just split governance. Then you just have several more years of constant obstruction. But Trump is already willing to deal with the Democrats, and he needs to make this even more of an issue. And he has kind of in the last week or so. Needs to come out every day and say, here's how many days it's been since I proposed that we deal with this situation, because there are DACA recipients right now getting screwed. There are people getting deported that could, potentially be granted leniency. And I have no problem with talking about that. But we need the wall, because I promised people one, they overwhelmingly support it. Just, fucking come to the table. It's, the Democrats love spending money on shit like that fucking tunnel between New Jersey and New York that's going to cost 4 times as much as Trump's proposed border wall will cost. At this point, I think probably Trump's the only one who can actually defend the border and make it actually come out on budget, maybe even under budget. That'd be a secondary victory. Now, the Democrats are going to have to own this issue. And in a lot of those competitive races, they don't want to have to own the issue in its current form. They need to at least partially solve the problem before the midterms. They're getting nervous, and rightfully so. It shows that there are a few Democrats there that have some degree of strategic thinking when it comes to electioneering. The party of Nancy Pelosi's and the Feinsteins don't. The California-style neoliberals, the open borders types, live in an echo chamber in which they do not believe that they are losing on this issue. But in their races, they're not. They're winning on the issue. So it's skewed their view. They don't realize that in virtually the entire rest of the country, outside of a few cities that they control lock, stock, and barrel and have for half a century, they don't realize that swing state America, small town America, suburban America, rural America, older and younger America all oppose the Democrats statistically on this concept. There is no real group of people that feels positive towards the Democratic Party outside of fruit and nut land. So they're going to lose. They're going to have real problems if they don't tackle it. The best advice I can give to them is to come to the table, give Trump his wall, and get whatever you can out of it and solve the crisis indefinitely. Because then at the very least, it's not a victory for the Democrats. You've lost basically on the issue. Trump has gotten more or less what he wanted. But at least it stops being an election issue. There are only a few people running in your party who actually come out on top because of the lack of a DACA solution. Most of the rest of you will suffer. The Republicans say, yeah, we're willing to make a deal. Trump's like, yeah, Trump is literally the one that started the discussion. And then the funny part is this. The Democrats don't want to discuss it, at least the Feinsteins and Pelosi's. That was your problem from the get-go. Trump had to inject that issue into the race, and nobody else was talking about it. He managed to make it basically our number 1 or 2 priority, basically tied with tax reform and maybe ISIS or something like that. One of the top issues of the campaign. Nobody even brought it up before Trump did. Nobody was talking about immigration reform, or for a few people it was a back burner issue. You get basically Marco Rubio saying, oh yeah, I don't worry, I side with the Democrats on this one. I don't want to touch the issue. But then the silent majority came along and kicked your ass. Be careful, or they'll do it again in the midterms. The Democrats can survive as a party only if they're willing to do something. You have to have a platform. Unfortunately, on immigration, your platform can either be will make deal with Trump or will not make deal, plant our feet, be stubborn, and lose. Well, that's not a great election proposal. That's about all. Peace out.